Welcome to Crappie Hippies at the Bench, an instructional video series on how to tie your own jigs, flies, and create your own fish-catching baits. Brought to you by Glasswater Angling for a better outdoors, makers of lead-free fishing tackle, inventors of Angle King, the Crappie Dueler, and home to hand-tied jester jigs, Ring King paddle tail grubs, lead-free jig heads, and more. Check us out at glasswaterangling.com. And now here's Crappie Hippie at the Bench. Hey everybody, Crappie Hippie at the Bench here. Thanks for joining us today on the segment on the show. And today we're going to make a favorite pattern of mine called Birdie's Bluegill. It's a friend of mine that's field tested for Glasswater for quite a while, and he loves this little bluegill pattern. He will use it anywhere from a tiny little half-acre farm pond all the way up to a 10,000-acre reservoir. One of his favorite patterns for crappie. Let's do it. As usual, I will tie and talk, and then about there you can go if you just want the silent build to music, watch and learn. That's kind of how I do things if you're just joining us for the first time. Alrighty, let's get after it. Birdie's Bluegill. What you're going to need is an orange jig head, and I make my orange paint, powder paint. My wife is an artist, and she was asking me one day why I would ever buy orange or purple, and I could just buy the three primary colors and mix up my own tones, and I didn't have a good answer to that because it made perfect sense. Okay, so that's what I started to do, is just take my three primary colors and make all my secondary colors like so. And then, of course, you want your white and your black to make your hues and your pastels and so on. Okay, so this starts out with just a little piece of purple, and I mean, you know, just a little bit of purple. Okay, got a little purple back streak on it, and you just want to have a little purple in a bluegill pattern. So now when you do this, you screw up and you cut a piece before you're even ready with your thread. Just lick your fingers a little bit, just twist it together like that, and that'll hold on. And if you can keep the dog from running through, or someone from sneezing, or the kids from running through and blowing it off on the floor, you're in great shape. We're going to use a chartreuse body, so I'm going to use chartreuse thread to match the chenille. And here we go with our usual start, all the way down to the hook point, at least halfway back, and then kind of just get here somewhere in the middle, ready to receive the feathers. Okay, so first thing we do, we take that, we want to measure it. We do not want a super long tail. This is a 16th ounce jig. It's going to be used in cold water. This is what I'm getting ready for Todd. He ordered a bunch more of these, and it's January here, and we're getting a little fishing in on the reservoirs, and we're getting some in on the slips and so on. But it's, as it gets colder, they just want a smaller and smaller meal because they're under environmental stress and they just don't feel like digesting big amount quantities of food when they're in that really cold water, because it takes them a long time to metabolize it. Okay, so now I got a nice piece of green chartreuse. We talk about what is chartreuse. You know, is it fluorescent yellow? Is it a green, or, you know, somewhere in between? It's all that. There's green chartreuse, there's regular chartreuse, there's lime, there's yellow chartreuse. Doesn't really matter. Just get yourself a kind of a light greenish, kind of a hot color feather like this. This is from outfit called it fluorescent chartreuse. I actually expected it to be a little lighter in color, but I'm not upset with it, not at all. Alrighty, match that to the other one. Now, as you can see, that cost me about, you know, a whole half a feather there to do that. And that's how you can kind of estimate, you know, your materials consumption and so forth. And two loose around. Okay. Two, pull it straight down and then tie it in. We can just get away with tying that whole thing in there. We don't have to trim. Okay, now that's about as much as I want to. I'm a fat jig guy, and I tend to want to just keep going and adding more and more. But once again, this time of year, dead of summer, dead of winter, you're going to want to kind of take it easy. Alrighty? and not make just a humongous fat jig. And we're going to come in here now, and we're going to take this nice nylon, nice bright chartreuse, and we're going to do a down and back for a nice fat body, juicy body. I like it. Anyway, this color is see how this chartreuse is different than the feathers. This is the fluorescent chartreuse. You know, it's like, shall we argue about it? No, it's not fluorescent yellow. I got fluorescent yellow sitting over there, and it's really yellow. It's not. Now I get about here, I'm going to pinch, and I'm going to pull. Now you can break this chenille if you get too excited, but you definitely want to pull it. You want to get it tight. You don't want it unwinding on you. And especially if you're selling jigs, you don't want it unwinding on your buddy. You don't want to. Todd is one of my best fishing buddies, and I sure don't want him getting stuck with a jig that's coming on all apart. So trapped it with 2 wraps, took 1 insurance wrap. I'm going to cut it off flush. 210 denier flat waxed thread is nice strong thread for this application, and we're almost done here. You put that little back streak in there, gives it a nice purple touch, makes it look so nice and bluegillish. And bass love this pattern. And crappies, believe it or not, eat tons of bluegill, not just in ponds but in reservoirs too. 1, 2, 3. Say that. We're gonna come back. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to wiggle this back and forth to help drive those knots and those wraps clear down to the hook shank. And then I'm going to... Now see, that thread is really strong. And that's a small jig, so I sure as heck don't want to distort and bend my hook. So I usually break it, but if it's going to be strong and mighty, then I will just cut it just like that. All right, there you go. Birdie's bluegill. It's an easy tie. It's a fun tie. It's a great tie, and you can see it's just got that nice little bluegilly look to it with a little purple and a little orange up there for the chest spot. And crappie, bass, other bluegill, and especially red ears, they're going to eat the heck out of that. So thank you for tuning in to Crappie Hippie at the Bench today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye now. Today's episode of Crappie Hippie at the Bench was brought to you by Glasswater Angling for a better outdoors, makers of lead-free fishing tackle. Find us at glasswaterangling.com. Our bed music today was Old Salooner Blues by Midnight North and Front Porch Blues by Chris Hagen. This is Crappie Hippie reminding everyone that conservation begins with you.